I'm not one to usually build up a ton of hype about movies at the beginning of the year, but it seems like 2025 is going to be a pretty fun year for movies, so I want to highlight some of the releases that I'm most excited about. Before we get into anything, I kind of just want to say thank you to everybody that saw my Best of the Year video and subscribed, and thank you for being here. Presence, directed by Steven Soderbergh. Soderbergh is one of the most creative directors working at the moment, with a string of very interesting and original movies like the Magic Mike films, Unsane, and Logan Lucky. While he has the release of Black Bag this year as well, I would definitely admit that I'm significantly more excited about this movie as it takes the haunted house genre and flips it on its head by telling its story from the point of view of a spiritual specter.
Spark.
Companion, directed by Drew Hancock. I knew absolutely nothing about this movie other than the involvement of Jack Quaid, Sophie Thatcher, and Zach Kreger. All three amazing artists working together on a directorial debut. Sign me up. Directed by Scott Derrickson. After Scott Derrickson proved himself to be a very creative action director with his mind-bending MCU entry Doctor Strange, tackling an action horror romance is another feat in and of itself. If I were to pick any director to take on this specific concept, I would ask for no other, and I can't wait to see what insanity he cooks up here.
Everything okay up there?
Yeah, everything's fine.
Come on, baby, let's have some fun.
The Monkey, directed by Osgood Perkins. Since The Black Coat's Daughter, Osgood Perkins has joined the ranks of modern horror legends like Ari Aster, Jordan Peele, and Mike Flanagan for his layered and personal tales of supernatural terror. When it was announced that he was going to be adapting The Monkey, not just as a director, but also as a writer, I was immediately hooked, and this is easily in my top 5 most anticipated of the year. Sinners, directed by Ryan Coogler. While I'm not the biggest fan of the Black Panther films, I do think that Ryan Coogler is one of the most impressive voices in film today. He's constantly making very emotional stories with very layered characters that feel very contained, even if they take place on a grander scale like the Black Panther movies. Is he going to create the modern Near Dark? Maybe. One can only hope. Ballerina, directed by Len Wiseman. I remember back in the day when I was obsessed with the making of the first Hunger Games film, and Chad Stileski's choreography and the rest of the 8711 team really impressed me. Ever since then, I've been sure to catch up on a good percentage of his filmography, and he's proven himself to be one of, if not the best of his craft working right now. Because of that, I will see any film in the John Wick universe. They're all so much fun and choreographed to perfection, and I really hope the Ballerina continues down that path, especially since Ana de Armas has shown us time and time again that she's a very capable action performer.
That's all the stars in the world! 7, 6, 11.
28 years later, directed by Danny Boyle. There's definitely a hype a-brewing for this movie already, and I can definitely say that I am one of the people adding to that hype. The trailer for this movie is one of the most intense trailers I've seen in a long time, while being able to tell us absolutely nothing about the plot, and stacking a cast with Jodie Comer, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, and Ralph Fiennes definitely doesn't extinguish the growing flames of this movie's anticipation. It also seems like it's really going back to the vibes and even the shooting style of the first film, and that consistency throughout all 3 movies is something that seems to be lost among a lot of horror franchises. So thank God they kept that persistent visual continuity. Jurassic World Rebirth, directed by Gareth Edwards. Gareth Edwards has been my choice to take over this franchise since he released Godzilla. He just captured the size and scope of a creature like that in such a beautifully disturbing fashion, and then he proceeded to take on movies like Rogue One, which is one of the best Disney Star Wars releases, and The Creator, which is one of the most visually exciting sci-fi movies of the 2020s, which further cemented my hopes that he would take over, but both Fallen Kingdom and especially Dominion made me feel as though the franchise would die and it would never return to its former glory, but they got the man with the plan on the billing. And then you bring together Scarlett Johansson and Jonathan Bailey. you have my signature on paper. Wake Up Dead Man, directed by Rian Johnson. Knives Out and Glass Onion are some of the most fun movies I've seen in years. I constantly put them on at parties, especially if somebody mentions they've never seen it, and everyone is always completely engrossed. They never fail to be so funny and twisty and full to the brim of well-written and memorable characters. So let's see what he's cooking up next for Benoit Blanc. Frankenstein, directed by Guillermo del Toro. I was admittedly very late on the Del Toro train, and trust me, I get it. He's pretty much a god of this art form if we're all being completely honest with ourselves. He creates some of the most interesting visuals in film, and from what I've seen, he's never made a bad film. So I'm really excited to see what he could possibly be cooking up with the story of Frankenstein. Bugonia, directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. Yorgos Lanthimos has recently become one of my favorite directors of all time, even going so far to make an entire ranking video about his films. He's teaming up yet again with his troupe to give us another piece of weirdness, and my butt will be seated. Shelby Oaks, directed by Chris Stuckman. Chris Stuckman has been one of my favorite creators and critics since I was probably about 12 years old, since during this era.
It might actually be the best action movie of the decade! Wow!
He's always been someone that deeply understands audiences and both their intelligence and expectations. Neon has been distributing some of my favorite movies of the past few years, and they seem to know what they're doing on all fronts, so I really trust that this will be something that we'll be discussing for a while. But these last two films are definitely my top two most anticipated of the year. Everything before this has more or less been in order of release, but these are definitive in their placements. Number 2 is Superman, directed by James Gunn.
Home. Take me home.
James Gunn has clearly proven himself to be someone that actually cares about the massive horde of comic book maniacs that are actively looking for film adaptations that genuinely take care of their beloved characters. All three of the Guardians films and the Suicide Squad very distinctively give the finger to the studio expectations placed on a comic book film and favor telling exciting and emotional stories that are contained to their specific characters rather than relying on extensive world building. Because of this, and the seemingly lost understanding of who Superman truly is, film really needs a movie like James Gunn's Superman to prove once again that sometimes the theme park rides of cinema are some of the most impactful experiences you can have as an audience member. But number 1 is Mickey 17, directed by Bong Joon Ho.
Oh, wow! Did you see that?
Parasite and Snowpiercer are two films that I consider modern classics, and they'll be hailed as such not just by myself, but by a lot of people for a very long time. The prospect of Bong Joon Ho returning to the world of sci-fi with a concept as interesting as this is something that I don't think any cinephile can pass up on seeing as soon as they possibly can. For me personally, I have the same hype as I would for any new Spielberg, Fincher, or even Villeneuve or Gerwig film, because he continues to provide audiences with films to constantly chew on for days and days after finishing them, infecting your everyday life and teaching you genuinely valuable lessons, which I feel is something that the general art of storytelling has lost in the modern age. So that is it. There will hopefully be more announcements further down the line to add to this list, but as it stands, these are the movies that I'm the most excited for this year. What are the movies that you're the most excited about? Did I forget any? Thanks for watching. My name's Jacob. I'm gonna go eat some dinner, and I'll see you, Space Cowboy.